The sky above Ardent Prime was always clear, its twin suns casting golden light over wide green fields and silver cities. It was one of humanity's newest colonies, built with care and pride. Families had come here to build better lives, children played in parks, farmers grew food, and laughter often filled the air. For a time it seemed like paradise, then came the shadows. No one expected an attack. The colony was peaceful. It had no real weapons, no defense fleet, and only a small local patrol. The people of Ardent Prime believed the galaxy was at peace. They believed no one would dare strike at innocent civilians. They were wrong. It started with a strange noise in the sky. A low hum that grew louder, dogs barked, children stopped playing, and parents looked up in confusion. Then the clouds parted and something terrible appeared. Dozens of alien warships filled the sky, black and sharp like blades. They came without warning, without mercy, and without a word. Within seconds, the bombing began. The first wave struck the central city. Tall towers exploded in fire. The second wave hit the farms, turning green fields into craters of ash. Families ran, screaming, holding their children. But there was nowhere to hide. The colony had no bunkers, no warning system, just panic and confusion. A teacher at a local school tried to gather her students. She shouted for them to run, to follow her. A fireball hit the playground before she could finish her sentence. The ground shook, glass shattered, and silence followed. The alien ships hovered like vultures, moving methodically. They fired at hospitals, transport hubs, and homes. Their goal was clear: complete destruction. No survivors, no resistance, only flames. In the control tower of the colony's communication hub, a technician named Ramos stayed behind. His hands shook as he sent out a distress signal to Earth. The room around him burned, consoles sparked, but he kept speaking. "This is Ardent Prime," he said, coughing. "We are under attack by unknown hostiles." Behind him, another explosion shook the building, dust falling from the ceiling like snow. He didn't stop. "Casualties in the millions," he continued, voice cracking. "No military presence here. This is a civilian colony." He looked into the camera, his face covered in soot and blood. His eyes were tired, hopeless. "If Earth hears this," he whispered. "No, they burned us alive." Then the signal cut off. By the time the sun rose the next day, Ardent Prime was gone. Smoke covered the land. Cities turned to ruins. Only a few thousand had survived, hiding underground or in caves. Most of them were children, silent and scared, their eyes wide with shock. No one knew why the aliens had done it. No demand was made, no warning given, no flag raised. The galaxy watched in silence. Some species said nothing, afraid to get involved. Others whispered that Earth must have done something to deserve it. But Earth was quiet at first, silent and cold, like a beast holding its breath. Then Earth moved. Back in the halls of United Terran Command, the message from Ardent Prime was played again and again. Military leaders watched in silence, their jaws tight. No one spoke for a long time. Then an old admiral stood up and said just one sentence: "We cannot let this go unanswered." And with that, the wheels of war began to turn. The news spread across the solar system. Earth had been attacked, its people burned, its children killed. Factories lit up, shipyards began to work day and night. Reserve fleets were activated. Sleeping warships awakened from orbital docks. Cargo vessels were refitted with weapons, every hand called to service. In just a week, the number was announced. Earth would send 800,000 Warbringers. The largest fleet humanity had ever assembled was now being prepared, not for peace, not for diplomacy, but for revenge. They called them Warbringers not just because they carried weapons, but because they carried humanity's fury. Every missile, every laser, every railgun was forged in anger, painted with sorrow and powered by a promise that Ardent Prime would be avenged and that the stars would remember what happens when you burn a human world across Earth. And every colony in the Sol system, the image of Ardent Prime's final moments played again and again, on giant screens in cities, in underground bunkers, in orbiting stations. People watched the burning colony, the crying children, and the last words of a dying technician. There were no speeches from politicians, no music, no flowers, just silence and fire. But in that silence, something grew. Not fear, not despair, something deeper, something older. Rage. The Terran Council met in a sealed chamber beneath New Geneva. The room was quiet, but every eye burned with fury. Reports showed the enemy fleet, the dead colonists, and the silence of the alien empire who never gave their name. The council didn't argue, didn't delay. They voted unanimously war on Mars. The shipyards came alive. Flames rose from forges. Sparks danced on hulls. Massive factories turned night into day as workers built faster than ever before. Battleships, destroyers, carriers, drones, all crafted for one purpose. And across Earth's skies, the first wave of Warbringers rose like a dark cloud of vengeance. The military gave each vessel a number, but the people gave them names. Names like Vengeance of Ardent, Screaming Sky, Silent Wrath, and No More Mercy. Families painted messages on the sides of the ships, some in memory of the dead, others as promises to the stars. Meanwhile, Earth sent messages to its allies. Some responded with fear. Some begged Earth not to escalate. But Earth did not wait for permission. The enemy had chosen war. In the oceans of Neptune, submarines rose to the surface and launched stealth satellites. On Titan, old bases reopened, fuel and weapons were stockpiled, and in the black void of space, training simulations ran non-stop. Soldiers learned how to board alien ships, how to fight in low gravity, how to survive in silence, but one message spread more than any order: leave no one standing. That became the code, the promise, the soul of the fleet. The gathering of 800,000 ships was not fast, but it was unstoppable. From Earth's orbit to the moons of Jupiter, ships lined up in formations. Some were sleek and new, shining with chrome and blue lights. Others were old, patched, and full of scars from old wars. But they all carried human will. A single planet had built a storm, and in the center of it all was the Terran flagship, Judgment of Terra, a massive dreadnought with 20 railguns, 4 launch bays, and armor made from lunar alloys. Its captain was Admiral Lucian Hale, an old soldier with tired eyes and a quiet voice. He had fought in the last war long ago when Earth almost fell. He had retired, hoping for peace. But when Ardent Prime burned, he returned to command. He didn't give long speeches. He simply stood before his crew and said, "We are not going to fight," he said. "We are going to end them." And the crew cheered. The alien empire still gave no answer. They ignored Earth's broadcasts. They didn't explain why they attacked. Some believed they thought humans were weak, that Earth would cry but not strike. They were wrong. On the edge of known space, the alien scouts watched the gathering of ships. They saw the numbers and laughed. "They're slow," one alien commander said. "We will strike them again before they reach us." But they didn't understand humans. The Warbringers were not just fast, they were patient. The fleet didn't rush because revenge was not a fire anymore. It was cold steel, forged over time, sharpened by purpose. In secret, Earth had upgraded everything: new engines, stealth tech, antimatter torpedoes, and armor that could survive direct plasma hits. While the galaxy had grown soft, humans had been preparing. The Warbringers were coming. Not as heroes, not as diplomats, but as the answer to a scream in the dark. The scream of a child who watched her mother burn. The scream of a boy hiding under a table while his home turned to ash. The scream of Ardent Prime, and that scream would be answered in fire. Admiral Hale stood on the bridge of Judgment of Terra, watching the stars shift ahead. A junior officer stepped forward, eyes wide. "Sir, final formations complete. All fleets report ready. Warp windows aligned." Hale nodded once. "Then take us in," he said quietly, "and make them remember." The first target was a border system near the burned ruins of Ardent Prime. It was called Talaris, once a quiet mining system now controlled by the same alien empire that attacked the human colony. Small defense stations floated near its asteroid belts, guarded by a fleet of patrol ships that had never known real war. That was about to change. The Terran fleet entered the system like a thunderstorm. Dozens of ships broke out of warp space with precision. Fighters launched in waves, drones lit the black sky, and the first battle began in silence. The alien patrol ships didn't expect this kind of force. They were used to slow freighters, scared smugglers, and harmless merchants, not steel giants that moved like shadows and hit like hammers. The first alien ship exploded without firing a single shot. A railgun shell from a human battleship tore through it, slicing it in two. A second was ripped apart by drone swarms, their metal wings cutting through hull like knives through paper. On the bridge of Judgment of Terra, Admiral Hale watched the operation with calm eyes. His crew moved fast but silent, trained and focused. Every officer knew what to do. Every weapon knew its mark. "Report," Hale said. "Enemy fleet scattering," replied his tactical officer. "They didn't expect a strike this large, sir." "Good," Hale said. "Let them run, but don't let them escape." Smaller Terran ships chased fleeing vessels, cutting off escape paths. Laser fire flashed in all directions. But it was never wild, never wasted. Every move the humans made was measured, practiced, perfect. In less than 10 minutes, the battle was over. Not one human ship had fallen. Not one alien vessel remained. They captured the mining stations, freed a few alien slaves, and left a simple message behind. One beacon repeating in a cold human voice. "This is the beginning. You burned our colony. We are coming for your worlds." Then the fleet jumped again. Every system near the border was next. The Warbringers didn't rest, didn't pause. They moved like a tide of vengeance, swallowing enemy fleets one by one. Each battle was swift, merciless, and final. The alien empire began to panic. They tried to send envoys, tried to offer silence as peace, but Earth did not respond. For them, words were already burned with ardent prime. There was no trust left to rebuild, only justice to be delivered. The news spread fast across the galaxy. Other species watched from afar, shocked at how fast humans were moving. The fleet of 800,000 Warbringers was not a rumor anymore. It was real. It was unstoppable. On distant stations, alien commanders whispered to each other. "They are still angry," one said. "It has been many days. Why have they not stopped?" "They will not stop," another answered. "They are human." Inside the Terran fleet, soldiers began to understand the scale of what they were doing. They weren't just winning. They were changing how the galaxy saw humans. No longer the peaceful traders, the settlers of new land, the newcomers to the stars. Now they were something else, something feared. Each ship that joined the Warbringers carried stories. A pilot whose sister died on Ardent Prime, a marine who found a burnt doll in the ruins, a medic who saved a child with half a face but full eyes still full of hope. They didn't need orders to hate. They only needed to remember. But not all moments were cold. Between battles, human soldiers wrote letters home. Engineers sang in the cargo bays. Pilots named their missiles after lost cities and lovers. In the face of war, humans still held on to what made them human, and that made them more dangerous than anything else. The fleet moved closer to the next major system, deeper into enemy space. The alien empire's leadership finally began to feel the pressure. They held meetings, shouted in panic, some calling for surrender, others for counterattack. They didn't know that Earth had already chosen their fate. This war would not end in negotiation. It would end in fire, on the bridge of a human carrier. A young officer looked at the growing starfield ahead. "Sir," he asked his captain, "when will we stop?" The captain looked at the boy, then turned back to the screen. "When every star they own remembers Ardent Prime," he replied. "Then, we'll stop." The Warbringers prepared for the next jump, silent and ready. The stars ahead were full of enemies. But behind them was something stronger. Earth's rage, carried on steel wings, ready to burn through the void, and no one could stop it. The Terran fleet reached the edge of the Daraka system, a heavily guarded zone deep in enemy territory. It was the first major stronghold of the alien empire, filled with massive defense platforms, long-range turrets, and a ring of warships ready to defend their ground. For centuries, this system had never been attacked. Until now. The humans didn't sneak in. They arrived with power and purpose. Thousands of ships appeared from warp space like lightning breaking. The night. The stars disappeared behind them, replaced by walls of dark metal. blinking lights and quiet fury. Admiral Hale stood on the bridge of Judgment of Terra, his arms behind his back, watching the enemy formations on the screen. His crew said nothing. Their hands moved over consoles, checking weapons, updating positions, preparing for battle. The Daraka fleet outnumbered the Terran force in this sector, but numbers didn't matter anymore. Not after what had already begun. "Begin operation," Hale said calmly. Human ships split into formations, moving like pieces on a chessboard. Each had a role and each crew knew what to do. The front line pushed forward, unleashing wave after wave of missiles, bright like falling stars. The back line launched drones and electronic jammers, blocking enemy sensors, creating chaos in their ranks. The aliens responded fast. Their ships fired beams of red energy, plasma rounds, and ion bursts. Some hit, tearing into smaller human vessels. But every time a ship fell, 5 more pushed forward. A Terran destroyer named Starhowl broke through. The first defensive line. It slammed straight into an enemy cruiser, its railguns ripping through armor. At the same time, Marines launched from its sides in armored pods, boarding the enemy ship and clearing it room by room. No mercy, no hesitation. Aboard the human carrier, Liberty Hammer, fighter pilots launched in squadrons. They moved fast, weaving through the battlefield like birds of prey, blasting engines and weak spots. Some were shot down, their ships breaking apart in flames, but others broke through and bombed key stations from below. Above the planet Daraka Prime, the alien command station watched the battle unfold with disbelief. Their sensors showed human losses, but also showed something worse. Their lines were breaking. One of their generals screamed in frustration, "How are they still pushing? They've lost dozens of ships." Another voice answered him, cold and quiet, "Because they're human." Back on the battlefield, Admiral Hale kept his eyes locked on the data feed. He saw the enemy trying to regroup, shifting their ships to block a second wave. "Send in the heavies," he ordered. From behind, the Terran lines, 10 massive dreadnoughts advanced, each one the size of a small city, covered in thick armor and glowing with reactor heat. These were Earth's oldest and strongest war machines, built during the First Expansion War and upgraded for vengeance. They didn't fire small rounds. They fired planet breakers. One dreadnought, Wound of Terra, opened fire with a triple railgun burst. The sound echoed through its decks as the shell traveled faster than sound. It slammed into an alien command ship, shattering it in one hit. A second round followed, piercing straight through a station and hitting a cruiser behind it. The aliens had never seen weapons like this before. They had never fought enemies who advanced through fire, who didn't retreat, who didn't flinch. Even when a Terran ship exploded, the others didn't stop, didn't even slow down. They simply closed the gap and kept moving forward. Within 1 hour, the Daraka defense fleet was gone. The sky above the planet was filled with human ships. Their weapons glowed, their hulls scarred, but their resolve untouched. Admiral Hale gave the final order. "Leave one station functional," he said. "Send a message to the next system." A signal was sent from a captured alien relay, translated in every known galactic language. "We are not here to negotiate. We are not here for peace. You burned our children. Now we burn your stars." The message echoed across the sector, played again and again in alien systems. And even on neutral trade routes it was clear, simple and terrifying. The Daraka system was silent now. Smoke and debris floated through space, pieces of ships, fragments of pride, drifting like broken bones, and the Warbringers prepared to move. Again, this was not the end. It was only the next step. The Daraka system had fallen, and the galaxy could no longer ignore what was happening. News of the Terran advance spread quickly, faster than ships, faster than weapons, faster than war itself. Even species that had never spoken to humans before now watched with wide eyes, wondering what would happen next. Some were silent, afraid to take sides. Others cheered in secret, hoping the Terran fleet would bring justice to the cruel empire that ruled their skies. And a few began to prepare for their own defense, just in case the humans turned toward them one day. But Earth had one target, only one. The empire that burned Ardent Prime. The Terran fleet continued its advance. They did not pause to celebrate. They did not stop to count their kills. They moved like a shadow across the stars. One system after another, smashing every defense in their way. In a system called Kelros, the enemy finally tried to make a stand. They gathered a fleet of over 2,000 ships, reinforced with heavy cruisers and new weapons powered by stolen technology. Their leaders gave speeches, called the humans weak and reckless, said this would be the system where the Warbringers would fall, but the humans were already coming. Kelros was a gas giant system with swirling red clouds and many moons. The enemy fleet waited near one of the larger moons, setting traps and building shields. They believed they had the high ground. They believed wrong. The Terran fleet didn't charge. In blindly, they arrived in waves, slow and careful. Scouts came first, then electronic warfare ships jamming signals. Then came the railgun frigates, hiding behind asteroids, firing from a distance, testing their defense. Then the real wave arrived. Thousands of ships dropped from warp at once, filling the system with light and fire. The enemy fleet opened fire, lighting up the darkness with plasma beams and missiles. But the Terrans didn't panic. Their ships moved with discipline, forming layers of attack and defense. Fighter jets danced between giant ships, dodging fire and striking weak points. Drones swarmed the enemy like metal insects, crawling across their hulls and breaking systems from the inside. Terran Marines boarded the outer platforms, disabling shields and clearing hallways with silent focus. On the bridge of Judgment of Terra, Admiral Hale stood like stone, watching the patterns of battle unfold. "They've been preparing for us," said one officer. "Yes," Hale replied, "but they still don't understand us." Human ships began pushing deeper into the enemy lines. One cruiser called Iron Horizon took heavy fire but didn't stop. It kept moving forward until it was close enough to unleash a full payload of antimatter bombs. The blast shattered 3 enemy warships and cracked a command station in half. Inside the command station, the alien officers screamed in panic. Systems were failing, airlocks breaking, reactors overheating. One of the generals tried to call for reinforcements, but there was only static on the comms. From orbit, the humans fired another volley, this time using deep, piercing rail rounds that drilled through the moon's defense bunkers like nails through paper. Buried installations exploded from within, sending dust clouds into space. In less than an hour, the Kelros line collapsed. Some enemy ships tried to retreat, but Terran interceptors chased them down. One by one, they were either destroyed or disabled. None escaped. Admiral Hale gave his standard order. "Spare one station," he said. "Let them send the message." The surviving station sent out a signal, repeating a single phrase in every major language. "Earth does not forgive." Across alien space, leaders and civilians heard those words and felt a cold chill. For centuries, humans had been seen as soft, diplomatic, always seeking peace, but now they saw a different side, a side that remembered everything, a side that counted every child lost. The Kelros system was now under Terran control. Engineers arrived next, setting up listening posts and repair docks. Wounded ships were fixed, fallen soldiers buried with honor, and new ships joined the fleet, fresh, from Mars, Luna, and even Titan, replacing those that had fallen. The Warbringers didn't shrink. They grew, and ahead of them lay the Crimson Fortress, the enemy's central stronghold. It was massive, dangerous, well defended. But none of that mattered to the humans anymore. They were coming, not for glory, not for conquest, not for control. They were coming for justice. And they would not stop. Not now, not ever. The Crimson Fortress was the beating heart of the alien empire. It was not just a station, it was a city in the sky, a floating world of steel and fire, wrapped in red energy shields and surrounded by hundreds of warships. It had never been touched by war, never seen defeat, never even feared it. Until now, the Terran fleet stood on the edge of its borders, nearly 200,000 ships in perfect formation. Dreadnoughts, carriers, gunships, fighters all waiting in silence like wolves ready to strike. Admiral Hale stood at the center of it all, watching the fortress spin slowly on his screen. He didn't blink. "They've called in every ship they have," said Commander Voss, his second-in-command. "They've gathered everything to protect. That fortress, good," Hale replied, "makes them easier to find." The fleet didn't rush. They moved with slow force, pushing forward system by system. The outer defenses fired first, huge beams of light cutting across space. Some ships were hit, hulls melting, armor breaking, but none of them turned back. Human vessels responded with thunder, railguns roared. Missile bays opened and lasers swept through the black void. One enemy cruiser exploded into pieces, then another, then a third. The space around the fortress turned red with fire and wreckage. Fighter squadrons launched in waves, small but deadly. They darted between capital ships, breaking through weak points in shields and tearing apart engines. Behind them, drones filled the sky, scanning, jamming, and swarming anything that moved. Still, the fortress stood, its shields held strong, glowing like a red sun. The alien commanders inside were shouting, ordering more power to weapons, more fighters to the sky, but even they could feel the pressure building. On board the Terran battleship Starvale, Captain Renna received new coordinates. Command wants us to pierce the left side of their fleet, her officer said. They say there's a gap forming. Then, let's make it bigger, she answered. Starvale and 6 destroyers broke formation and surged forward. They fired everything they had, smashing through the gap like a spear through armor. Behind them followed troop carriers bringing Terran, Marines for a bold assault. For the first time, the aliens began to fall back. Inside the Crimson Fortress, alarms screamed. Walls shook from shockwaves and the air smelled of burnt metal. One alien general slammed his fist on the console. "Why won't they stop?" he cried. "We've already lost half our fleet." A younger officer whispered. "They lost something, too." Far above, Judgment of Terra aligned for a precision strike. It was a weapon never used before in open war. A concentrated plasma lance that could pierce a moon. Admiral Hale gave the command. Fire. A massive beam of light burst forward, silent but terrifying. It struck the enemy flagship protecting the fortress, piercing it from top to bottom. The explosion was bright enough to light the nearby planet. The alien crew never had time to scream. The fortress's outer shields flickered for the first time. "Push everything forward," Hale ordered. "Break their circle." Terran ships surged, not as individuals, but as a single force. One purpose. One mission. The aliens fired desperately, but the line had cracked, and now the flood was rushing in. In a coordinated assault, Terran boarding pods struck the lower side of the fortress. Explosives blew open airlocks and Marines stormed inside. Weapons ready, they cleared corridors, shut down power nodes, and took control one level at a time. It was chaos inside, fire and shouting, alien officers running through halls, trying to stop what had already begun. The Marines didn't speak. They moved with training and memory. They remembered Ardent Prime. After 4 hours, the fortress was silent. Its shields fell. Its guns stopped. Its commanders were captured or dead. Terran soldiers raised their flag in the heart of the enemy's most protected base. The rest of the alien fleet broke and ran. For the first time, their empire knew fear, Admiral. Hale looked at the image of the fortress burning from within, its red glow fading into black. He didn't smile. He only gave one quiet command. "Tell Earth, the fortress has fallen." And the message was sent, not just to Earth but across the stars. The Terran fleet had taken the Crimson Fortress, and the war was not over. Not yet. The fall of the Crimson Fortress shattered the enemy's confidence. For centuries they had ruled this part of the galaxy. They believed no one could ever reach their throne, but now it was in ruins. The symbol of their power burned, and it burned because of humans. Across their empire, panic spread. Governors sent desperate messages to their homeworld, asking for help. Soldiers abandoned outposts, afraid of being the next target. Even civilians started fleeing toward neutral space, hoping to escape before the Warbringers arrived. But the Terran fleet did not stop. They continued forward, deeper into enemy territory, sweeping through systems that had once laughed at humanity. Now, those same systems sent signals of surrender. Before the first Terran ship even arrived, Admiral Hale stood aboard Judgment of Terra, staring at the growing map of captured territory. Red enemy symbols turned gray one by one. Some fleets ran, others begged, but none could slow the advance. They offered surrender, asked Commander Voss quietly. They offered silence, Hale replied, but they never offered peace when Ardent Prime burned. In the fleet, soldiers didn't speak of glory. They spoke of justice. Some carried photos of loved ones who had lived on Ardent Prime. Others wore names on their armor, names of lost children, friends, teachers, neighbors. Their pain kept them moving. In one system, the humans found a planet used as a slave hub. Alien guards fled the moment the Warbringers dropped out of warp. Marines landed and freed thousands, not just humans, but many species once taken by force. A young girl from a peaceful race looked up at a Terran soldier and whispered, "Are you the humans?" He nodded. Then the stories were true. She said, "You came." Another battle began near a gas giant where a large alien fleet had tried to regroup. They had built a shield network between moons, thinking it would stop the humans from breaking through. It didn't. Terran ships focused their fire, disabling the anchors holding the shield in place one by one. The moons shook as explosions cracked their surfaces. With no protection left, the enemy fleet was exposed. The Warbringers struck fast, like a blade through soft armor. Within 20 minutes, the fleet was gone. Back at the alien capital, fear turned to argument. Their leaders screamed at each other, some blaming humans, some blaming their own commanders for waking a sleeping giant. One of the High Council members slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "You destroyed a human colony thinking they would bow," he said. "But they rose and now they are burning us instead." Outside, protests filled the streets. Citizens who once supported war now begged for surrender. They didn't want to be next. They didn't want to face the same fate as Crimson Fortress. In the stars above, the humans kept coming. One ship called Ocean of Iron received a signal from a captured alien ship. It was a message from a young officer begging for his crew to be spared. The Terran captain listened carefully, then responded, "We do not kill the weak. We kill those who burn the innocent." The alien officer wept. Across the fleet, engineers worked day and night, repairing ships, building new weapons, upgrading armor. Supplies came from Earth, Mars, Titan, even from colonies that had never seen war before. They sent food, medicine, parts, and volunteers. The Warbringers grew stronger after every battle, and now only one target remained. The alien homeworld, Admiral Hale, stood on the bridge, his eyes on the final star system ahead. It was large, beautiful, full of life, but it carried the weight of every lost soul from Ardent Prime. "They will be waiting for us," said Voss. "Let them wait," Hale replied. Signals came from the enemy leaders. They begged for a meeting, a truce. They promised compensation. They swore they would never attack again. But Earth didn't answer with words. The fleet prepared to jump one last time. The stars ahead glowed red, not from fire, but from the blood of history. The humans didn't come for peace talks. They came with 800,000 Warbringers, and this time, no one would stop them. The alien homeworld stood in the center of its star system, shining blue and silver. It had once been a symbol of power, filled with golden towers, thick defense rings, and a proud military that ruled entire sectors. Now it trembled under the shadow of 800,000 Warbringers. The Terran fleet arrived like a storm without sound, filling the sky with endless lines of metal and fire. Dreadnoughts lined up beside carriers, battleships hovered above the planet's orbit, and destroyers circled below like sharks waiting to bite. Inside the alien capital, citizens ran to shelters. Sirens screamed through the streets and leaders met in silence. The High Council tried to speak with Earth again, sending signal after signal. "We surrender," they said. "We admit our mistake. Please don't destroy us." But no message came back. Admiral Hale stood on the bridge of Judgment of Terra, watching the homeworld spin slowly on his screen. His officers waited for his command. No one spoke. No one moved. They all remembered the beginning. They remembered Ardent Prime. Commander Voss stepped forward. "Orders, sir." Hale looked at him with tired eyes. "Begin." The first strike came fast. Human railguns targeted orbital stations and shipyards. Massive shells ripped through steel, turning proud stations into burning metal clouds. The second wave followed. Fighters, drones, and stealth ships dropped from orbit, disabling defenses one by one. On the ground, alien soldiers tried to resist, but they were no longer fighting confused settlers or weak colonies. They were facing warriors trained in pain, built by loss, driven by memory. Terran Marines landed across the surface, pushing through bunkers, deactivating shield generators, and locking down key zones. They didn't destroy cities without cause, but they destroyed anything tied to war. Every military site, every lab that once made weapons, every factory that built the bombs used on Ardent Prime. The humans didn't come for revenge, they came for justice. Above, the alien leaders finally opened their doors. They stood outside the Great Tower, raising their hands in surrender as Terran ships hovered above. For a long moment, no one moved. Then a single voice came through the speakers of every Terran ship. "This is Earth," the voice said. "The war ends here." The message played on repeat as the weapons went quiet. The sky still burned, but no more shots were fired. Human forces had complete control. The homeworld had fallen, but Earth did not destroy it. Admiral Hale walked through the halls of the enemy capital with his boots echoing against polished stone. Behind him marched his guards, alert but calm. He entered the throne room where the alien emperor sat on the ground, surrounded by guards, who had dropped their weapons. Hale looked at the broken ruler and said only one thing: "You burned Ardent Prime." The emperor nodded slowly, unable to speak. Hale turned and walked away. The Terran fleet didn't stay long. They dismantled the war factories, destroyed every ship in orbit, and left warning beacons on every moon. Each beacon spoke the same line in every language: "If you harm Earth, we will return." Then the Warbringers left the system, thousands of ships rising into the stars like a wall of steel fading into the black. The alien empire was no more. It would never rise again. Back on Earth, people gathered in the streets watching the first live feed of the returning fleet. Families cried as they saw their loved ones alive. Teachers hugged students who had grown stronger. Leaders stood silent as the names of the fallen scrolled. Across skyscreens, a monument was raised where Ardent Prime once stood. A single stone tower with one line carved into it: "You burned one of us. We came as all." Admiral Hale stood before the monument, with his coat blowing in the wind, his hands behind his back, his eyes locked on the sky above. He didn't smile, he didn't cry, he only whispered, "It's done." And then he walked away. The galaxy would never forget the day Earth answered fire with fire and sent 800,000 Warbringers to remind the stars who humans truly were.